The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Careers with Sara on Armed Radio Global. Tonight, Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. As you probably listened to my 2 weeks show, I spoke about salary negotiations, and this will be part 3, salary negotiations, discussing about how you can get the raise that you want. So, preparing for the negotiation is really not easy. It requires a lot of gut and confidence, and you probably invested in my show for one of the 3 reasons. You would like to talk to your present employer into paying you more, or you are up for promotion and will be negotiating your compensation package, or you are applying for a new job and want to cut the best deal you can. So I'm going to teach you a lot of negotiating tactics that will help you negotiate the best deal. But first, let's look at the big picture. What makes you valuable to an employer? What positions you to get the best deal? So the power comes from having options. Your power is in direct relationship to the options that you have versus the options that the other side has. So let's do with one part of your job so well that you become irreplaceable. You reduce the options that your employer has by doing one part of your job so well that you become irreplaceable. It doesn't have to be everything you do on your job, just one part of it. Do one part so well that they wouldn't know where to find a replacement. So, for example, be the physician in the emergency ward who never gets flustered, however great the pressure. Be the police officer who has an uncanny ability to calm down angry people. Be the school teacher who can make math sound exciting to even the most reluctant pupil. Be the business manager who has an exceptional ability to spot new trends. Be the receptionist with an amazing ability to handle complaining customers. I had a candidate who was transferred from one site to another site in a daycare, and she was irreplaceable because what happens was she could handle 17 kids all by herself without being agitated, without being upset, without being irritable. She was very calm, very good, and never complaining. And every time I would walk in the room just to watch her, I would be amazed. Everything is under control and nothing is bothering her. So this something is really not replaceable. So be somebody like that. When the executive committee meets to discuss your raise or promotion, you want them saying he's not perfect in everything he does, but when it comes to blank, there is nobody who can do a better job. I don't know where we'll ever find a replacement. Remember that your power as a negotiator is in direct relationship to the options that you have versus the options that your boss has. You want to remove the options that your employer has by doing one part of your job so well that you don't think he or she would ever find a replacement. On the other side of the coin, you want to use this principle to increase your power. How do you increase your power in a salary negotiation? You do it by developing options before you go into the negotiation. It amazes me how many people will go into a salary negotiation, but they haven't thought through what they are going to do if the boss says no to their request for more money. If only they would think it through a little. if they would say to themselves, what would I do if I wasn't working here? What options are available for me? Even better, make a few phone calls and line up a few options. Then you are started to develop a real power. It doesn't mean that you will charge into your boss and say, give me what I want or I'm out of here. It does mean that you will be a more powerful negotiator because you'll be sitting there thinking, I hope they'll offer me a good deal, but if they don't, I've got these other options that look good to me. If you want to have ultimate power in a salary negotiation, make the options better than what you're negotiating for. Now you're sitting there thinking, I'll stay out of sense of loyalty, but I hope that they say no because I really want to go start my own business or become a professional golfer or join the Peace Corps. Your power in a salary negotiation is in direct relationship to the alternatives that you have versus the alternatives they have. I'm not suggesting that you threaten to quit if you don't get an increase in pay, but to identify which side has the power. You might want to take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left side of the line, write your alternatives in the event they don't give you what you want. How many other companies are out there that would give you as good an opportunity or better? On the other side of the line, draw a list of their alternatives if in the event that you quit over this issue. How easy would it be for them to replace you? In this way, you can establish how much power you have in negotiation. The third principle that's important here is the principle of being prepared to walk away. It's number one pressure point in any negotiation. Now, I'm going to suggest you something, but don't do this if you're in a weak position with your company. If you're in a strong position, though, it probably would help you to plant a few rumors in the department. Take the biggest gossip in the company to lunch and swear him to secrecy. Lean over and say, can I trust you to keep a secret? The only reason you've sprung for lunch is knowing perfectly well that you can't trust him to keep a secret. But he's going to respond, yes, of course you can, you know me. Now he's drooling to hear what you have to say. Don't mention a word of this, but I may not be here much longer. I've had a terrific offer from a competitor and I'm seriously considering it. If you have picked the right person, the entire office will be talking about it tomorrow. And by the afternoon, your boss will be wanting to have a chat with you to assure you of your great future with the company. So, take this into considerations. Now, recognize that your power in the negotiation is your relationship to the alternatives that each side has. And reduce the employer's options by doing one part of your job so well that they wouldn't know where to find a replacement. And realize that the most important pressure point is this: which side is prepared to walk away from the negotiations if they can't get what they want. Now, let's face it, sitting down and negotiating an increase in pay with your boss isn't a thing anyone looks forward to. It's a tense negotiating situation. It's tense because so many personal power factors come into play. 4 of them really come into play when you are negotiating for more money: title power, reward power, coercive power, information power. Title power is the first power that can be nerve-wracking. Is title power. You are dealing with someone who has a more powerful position than you, and that can be intimidating. We respect titles and professional designations in this country, not as much as the Swiss and the Germans do, but to a great extent, we feel intimidated when we negotiate a raise in pay with a vice president in charge of human resources. What settles your nerves on this issue is remembering that some of these titles don't mean a thing. Then there is reward power, the second intimidating element, even when interviewing is reward power, because the HR director has the ability to reward you by giving you a pay increase. It makes you feel very vulnerable. Don't focus on how much you need the raise. Concentrate on the thought that there are dozens of companies out there willing to pay you well for your skills. If you are prepared to put all of your talents on the line to solve your company's problems, you're rewarding your company. The company is not rewarding you. If you do your job so well that your company would have no idea how to replace you, you're rewarding the company by being willing to accept a pay raise when you could do so much better by working for another company. Then there's coercive power. Coercive power is the power to punish. What if they get angry with you because you ask for a raise? What if they get so upset that they accuse you of lack of loyalty to the company? Then there is information power. Chances are you are sitting there wondering what they know that you don't know. Is the company in the expansion mode where it's looking for good people to move up in the organization, or is it downsizing where it's a financial difficulties and looking for ways to cut payroll? Maybe eliminating your job. When information is withheld, it makes us nervous and uptight. Many companies use this as a weapon to control their employees. They have information that is restricted to the management, not because it's that secretive, but because they know that withholding information can intimidate the employees. Ignore all that corporate nonsense and have the courage to ask for what they are worth. Now, let's talk about never negotiate with someone who can only say no to you. When negotiating for a raise in pay, you should never negotiate with someone who can only say no to you. That's an underlying principle of negotiating, isn't it? There's no point in trying to negotiate a better deal with a store clerk if the store clerk doesn't have the authority to say yes to you. There is no point in negotiating for a loan at a bank with a bank officer who can only say no to you. And the same thing applies with negotiating an increase in pay with your boss. Obviously, you have to go through channels. If your boss is the office manager, it wouldn't be very smart of you to go around her and just walk into the office of the vice president in charge of operations, sit down and start talking about an increase in pay. However, understand the dimensions of what's going on. If you were only talking to the office manager and the office manager has to get this increase in pay approved by the vice president, chances are the office manager is working on a very tight budget. There is pressure on her to keep expenses down. If she feels she can retain you without having to give you an increase in pay, chances are she would prefer not to do that. That puts you in the awkward situation of having to put pressure on her to get her to take that request of an increase in pay to her boss. Putting pressure on her in this situation very often means threatening to quit in one way or another, and that creates confrontation, which creates bad feelings and gets the office manager down on you. So your first thought should be, can the person that I'm going to sit and talk to about this increase in pay give me an okay right away? Or does he or she have to go to somebody else higher up the company chain of command? If he or she doesn't have the authority to give the increase in pay, then you have three alternatives. And that will be go over his or her head, request that you sit down with your immediate supervisor and the person who could give the increase in pay, work through your immediate supervisor, but get him or her on your side in terms of getting you the increase in pay. Let's look at each of these three options. First, going over your immediate supervisor's head is very dangerous. In most corporations, it will backfire on you. It could always be an option later if you fail to get what you want and you're willing to quit over it. However, in the initial stages of the negotiation, let's roll that one out. Option number 2 is to request a meeting between you and your supervisor and his or her boss to discuss this increase. Whether you want to do this or not depends a lot on the personality of your immediate supervisor. If he doesn't have a very strong personality, he may actually appreciate the fact that you are willing to go with him and state your case. However, if he's very protective of his department, he may really be opposed to do this because he feels he'd be losing some power over his department. I suggest that you consider the personality of your immediate supervisor, and if you are not sure how he would feel about this suggestion, just put it to him. Say, what will be the best way for us to handle this? Would you like me to come with you, or would you prefer to go to the boss yourself? The third alternative always seems the best one to me, and that's to work with your immediate supervisor to get him or her on your side so she will sincerely work to get you what you want. To make this work best for you, be sure that you review the higher authority technique that I'm going to teach you soon. And there are 2 counter gambits that are very important here. When your boss tells you that he or she has to get your raise in pay approved by somebody else, your first response should always be to appeal to that person's ego. You say, but he always goes along with your suggestion, doesn't he? If you've got a boss with a big ego, she won't be able to resist this. She will say, why, yes, you're right. It's really just a formality. He always does what I want him to do. But sometimes the response will be, oh yes, he normally goes along with my suggestions, but I can't approve it without his say-so. Then you'll go to counter gambit to number 2, which is to get her commitment that she will recommend it to the higher authority. And you will recommend this increase to him, won't you? By pinning her down in this way, she can only go one of 2 ways. Of course, the hopeful response is, well, yes, you think you've earned the increase. I'll do everything I can do to get it for you. But in the back of her mind, she wasn't willing to recommend you enthusiastically for the increase. These techniques will bring it out. At that point, she will say, well, frankly, I think he's going to want to see an improved performance from you before he'll approve this. Anytime you can draw out an objection, you are ahead because it gives you an opportunity to answer and counter that objection. So a basic principle of negotiating an increase in pay is to never negotiate with someone who can only say no to you. Now, let's go over anticipating objections. First, anticipate and preclude objections that might come up in the negotiation. The 2 standard objections you are going to hear when you ask for an increase in pay are the company isn't going well enough to afford the increase in pay, or your performance isn't good enough to get an increase in pay. So let's discuss this one at a time. First, the company isn't going well enough to afford the increase in pay, right? So come to the conference loaded down with information about this one. If your company is publicly traded, spend an evening on the internet researching the company's performance. Because of the access of the internet, so much information is available that would have been hard to locate in the past. Look for stock trends, press releases that tout good performance by the company, investments made in expansion, and so on. Preempt your boss from the "we can't afford it" defense by talking about the company's performance. Isn't it great to be working for a company that's doing so well? You start out with, right? And then you say the stock is up 9% over the last 9 months. Sales are up 12% and profits are better than ever. Then your performance isn't good enough to get an increase in pay argument. Hopefully this is not true. Come to the session armed with details about the goals you set for your performance. last year and how you accomplished nearly all of them. Tell your boss, having you work on setting these goals for me was very helpful last year. After you have approved my raise in pay, I'm looking forward to doing it again this year. If you didn't accomplish your goals, come up with a plausible reason why it wasn't your fault. The only thing that stopped us from accomplishing all these goals was the company cutting back on funding for our department. So that way you're armed and you know what to say, and they have nothing else to defend themselves. Now let's concentrate the issues. A negotiating gambit that really comes into play here is learning to concentrate on the issues. Think of it as a game of tennis. The ball is being hit back and forth across the net. The only that affects the outcome of the game of tennis is the movement of the ball across the net. Good tennis players concentrate on the ball, not on what the other player is doing. And when you are negotiating for an increase in pay, the only that matters is the movement of the goal concessions across the negotiating table. The only thing that matters is where are we now compared to where we were 5 minutes ago, half hour ago, yesterday, or last week. Because in our minds, we very quickly tie how much money we make to our worth as a human being. We are in very sensitive territory here. Things may be said in this negotiation that would cause you get angry and upset with the other person. It may even cause you to quit on the spot and stomp out. Be prepared for this kind of sensitive issue. Good negotiators don't let themselves get upset in a negotiation. International arms negotiators only walk out of negotiation as a planned negotiating gambit. The only time they ever allow themselves to get upset is as planned negotiating gambit. Former Secretary of State Warren Christopher says, "It's okay to get upset with people in a negotiation as long as you are in control and you are doing it as specific negotiating technique. It's when you get upset and lose control that you always lose in a negotiation." So if you think you are telling your boss, "I'm quitting because you're not giving me a pay," your boss is not losing. He's not losing because he can replace you. He can have somebody else to work for the same position for a much lower pay than you get paid. So you think, "I'm gonna quit, I'm gonna get my boss upset." You are not making that boss upset. Actually, your boss is being happy. Now, you should take the same approach in negotiating an increase in pay with your boss. Have your objective be clear. Think through your negotiating strategy and implement that strategy. Focus on results, not emotions. Don't get derailed if your boss criticizes your performance or questions your loyalty. The only thing that you should focus on is this: where are we now compared to 5 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago? Be a good negotiator and learn to concentrate on the issues. I'm going to play you a video about how Barbara Concord says when a person is asking for an increase and what she thinks about it. And this will be after break.
Hello, this is Sara Yusupov. Stop by my show, Let's Talk Careers with Sarah, Wednesdays, 10 p.m. Eastern, where I will discuss about your dream job, career coaching, answering your questions regarding careers, exclusively on TuneIn Satellite and the Armed Radio Global Networks.
Do you really want to raise, or this is a for example?
We all want to make more money.
Yes, of course. And I could tell looking at you, you're underpaid. Because you would have put a much nicer shirt and trousers if you were making enough money.
Wow.
If you want to get a raise, and particularly if you're a woman who wants to get a raise, women don't ask for raises. I can tell you, I've employed thousands of women over my life. They do not ask for raises unless they absolutely must. And men ask all the time. And so what the smartest thing to do is, first of all, make an appointment to ask for a raise. Even if your expectation isn't that you're going to get it, at least ask for it, because that sets you up for the next meeting where you'll likely get it. And the smartest thing to do is to walk in with a list of your responsibilities when you started at the company, and then also the list of things you've taken on since you started. And simply make the boss aware that you have a lot more responsibility. You're delighted to take it on, give me more, but I'd like to be compensated, and to name a number you'd like. Most women, when they work up to the point where they'll ask for a raise, they won't give a number. I'd like to get a raise. Men will walk and say, I'd like to get a raise. I'd like it to be around 10, 15%. No qualms. So if you're a timid woman, I think a smart thing to do is ask, what would a man do? And walk in thinking like a man. If you don't get the raise, you have to ask, what would merit a raise? So that when you come back the next time, you can say, hey, this is what I've done. I'd like to get that raise. When someone has come to me and said they got another offer for a lot more money from somewhere else, and it's not followed up with, so goodbye, they're looking for something from me, I never try to buy their loyalty, because I haven't earned their loyalty, obviously, and they're on their way out the door. I'm not going to stop them with more money. They're already off my list. I can't wait for them to go out that door. And it's perfectly acceptable to go to your boss and say, you know, I'm a little surprised. I got an offer for a lot more money, but I'm not taking it because I love this business. But I'm really wondering, could you level with me as to my future prospects here? That's a great opener. And it's not insulting, and it's not threatening. And guess what? You'll get the best out of that boss. Very, very different than saying you want to pay up. The tone is entirely different. One, the boss wants to measure up. The other style, the boss wants to boot you out that door. I think the piece you have to put in is, I got a great offer. I love working here, and I plan to stay. But it brings on the table my question, what do you think my prospects here in the future might be? That's pretty fair. If I were a boss, I would go out of my way to think of how I could push you ahead. If I valued you, and if my response instead was, well, I'm happy to hear about it, but, you know, we pay you fairly, and you have good responsibilities, and we're pretty happy, so do what you want, or something like that, I would know I'm not valued, and I would take the other job. Because the one thing you must be in any position you are, male, female, whatever level you are, is you must be valued and appreciated to be promoted. It's a great way to go in and take a litmus test as to how you're valued in that boss's eyes. And your boss has more to do with your future than the company you're working for, your responsibilities and everything else. If they love you, they will push you ahead. I had so many people come and ask for raises over the years. Of course, mostly men. My theory as a boss is you get ahead of your valued employees and you raise them before they ever get to ask. Because employees will kill for you. If you can treat them with that kind of reverence and respect and prove it by paying them more, they'll kill for you. They're loyal forever. And I've always been very lucky to be surrounded by people that are enormously loyal, and it's no accident. Because I make sure I push money, recognition, whatever I have, opportunity, more valuable than raises, bonuses, whatever it takes to make them feel I am loved. That's what everybody wants.
Now, there's another video that I want to share. It's also from YouTube. How the guy has gotten his increase, double his salary with these tactics of negotiations. So stay tuned.
Getting what you want while you help others get what they want. Today you're going to be hearing from one of the world's greatest experts on negotiating. I can add a couple of points from my own experiences. Number one, people give concessions to people they like. Confrontational negotiating is possible, but it's much more difficult to get what you want. Also, in confrontational negotiating, the person on the other side is much more willing to walk away because of their emotions. Which brings in point number two. You must be able to walk away from the deal. Being able to walk away gives you a massive advantage in negotiating. Let me give you an example of how when I was 26 years old, I negotiated my way to doubling my salary and becoming the youngest director in a Fortune 500 company. I worked as an analyst for the management consulting arm of one of the largest publishers in the world. My job was to analyze the market, consult with clients, and get my name in the paper as often as possible. My first 2 years working at the firm, My name had appeared in over 200 publications around the world, including the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. I had done my job. Better yet, my competitors knew who I was. Well, it came time for me to negotiate my salary increase. Instead of the 5 to 10% that everybody gets every year, I wanted 200%. I knew that in order to get that kind of increase, I had to be able to walk away from the deal. So I spoke with one of our top competitors, went in to interview with them, and told them that I would take nothing less than a certain income, which they had no idea was double my salary. We joked, we laughed, I told them how great it would be to work for them, but that they probably couldn't afford me. Well, they thought that things were going great, and they had an ego, and they said, of course we can afford you. You see, I got them to like me, they were willing to concede because they liked me, and also I was willing to walk away, and they knew it. I got the job, but it wasn't over. Now, with this new job offer, I went back to my current employer, and I told them that I had been offered a job, and it looked like I was ready to go. Of course, they were in shock. They said, what could possibly be the offer that got you to go? And I showed them the offer, and their jaw dropped. I told them that, listen, there'd be just really one thing that would help me to stay. Two things, actually. One, you'd have to keep the current income that I have from this new offer, doubling my income, essentially. And the second thing is I wanted more responsibility. I wanted to be in charge of Asia. I wanted to be the director of Asian operations. Well, they knew I was willing to go, and they liked me. So they were willing to concede both of those things and keep me on. I essentially, in 1 hour, doubled my income and raised my level of responsibility within the company. Now, it turned out to be great for them, too, because as director of Asian operations, I brought in a boatload of money to the company. Everybody won, and that's the most important thing when you're finishing up a deal. Is it going to be a win-win? If it's not, why even start? There's a lot more to negotiating than those two things, but it's a great start. The more you master this skill, the more you get more of what you want in every area of your life. Here's Coral to introduce.
So, as you can see, it is possible, but only you have to know how to do that. By listening to my show, there is a lot of techniques and a lot of procedures, a lot of strategies that you have to take it with you before you even go to your boss. So let's move on to negotiating pressure points. If the employer is dragging his or her feet, making you a job offer or giving you a raise, it's time to get some action with the subtle use of negotiating pressure points. These are techniques that bring pressure to bear. They need to be used subtly so that the employer doesn't take offense or feel that you're being too aggressive in promoting your position. There are 3 major pressure points: time pressure, information power, and walkaway power. So the time pressure plays a part in every negotiation, but it has special significance when you are negotiating compensation. Your children know about time pressure, don't they? So if they want something, when they do ask for it, just at the last moment, just when you are rushing out the door for an important meeting and you're already late, that's when they know they have the best chance of getting what you want. Why? Because it's easier to give it to them than to take time talking about it. People become flexible under time pressure. When employers are not under any time pressure to get you on board, it's hard to negotiate a great compensation package. When they are under a lot of time pressure, you can often get a terrific compensation package. When time pressure might be the employer be under. Of course, you won't know until you have invested some time gathering information and asking questions. But here are some that come to mind. They want to promote the person who is doing the job now, but can't until they find a replacement. The position has been open for a while and morale is sinking in the department, or the territory is not being serviced well. You have an expertise to solve a problem that is costing them money or giving them heartburn. The person who is doing the job now is failing, but they can't fire him until they find a replacement. The person doing the job now needs to give you on-the-job training and can't move on to her new job until they're hired. You are hired. This isn't just a partial list of the many things that could put the employer under the time pressure. Make your own checklist and expand it with each new situation you encounter. Keep your list in mind when you first meet with the interviewer and see if you can spot any symptoms of time pressure he or she may be experiencing. Acceptance time. Understand that it often takes potential employers time to understand that the goals they set for this hire are unrealistic. It takes them time to realize that they are not going to get someone with a master's degree to take the job. It takes time for them to realize that they are not going to have to pay more than they expected for someone with experience that they want. Perhaps they need time to see that they are not going to get a better applicant or get you to take what they have offered you. My advice is to always leave the door open for the employer to reopen negotiations instead of pressuring them by saying, "This is my final offer." Leave the door open with statements such as, "I hope you find the person you are looking for, but if you don't, call me. If I haven't found what I am looking for, we can always talk some more." Spending a lot of time with the employer, patience is a really virtue when negotiating. The longer you can keep the employer involved in negotiations, the better chances you have of getting what you want. Take your time finding out about the company. Ask as many questions as you can think of. If you can get them to give you a tour of their facilities, make it last as long as you can. Why do these things? For two reasons. The longer you spend with them, the more trust they will develop in you. The more time they spend with you, the more flexible they will become when the negotiation starts. Time spent with you will affect their flexibility on salary and other compensation factors. Why? Because mentally they want to recoup the time spent with you. Their mind starts to tell them, "I can't walk away from this empty-handed after all the time I have invested." There is a caveat here. If you aren't careful, time can work against you in the negotiations as well. You may find yourself becoming more flexible for the same reasons employers do. Your subconscious mind will be saying, "I don't want to walk away from this with nothing after all the time I've spent on it." Then tie up all the details. Don't leave anything to "we can work that out later." Sometimes an issue comes up early on and neither side wants to slow down the negotiations by taking time to resolve it. Perhaps it's an issue of removing expense or amount of vacation of the first year. The HR director said, "That's not a problem. We can work that out later." Perhaps it wouldn't be a big problem if you worked it out now. But if you wait until you are ready to put the final deal together and you are under a lot of time pressure, it could become a deal breaker. Or you are so intent on getting the job that you are not prepared to walk away over this issue and you have to concede it. My advice is to tie up all the details and avoid last-minute surprises. So, don't assume that it's okay. We can discuss this later. I'm just having problems. I'm just having time pressure right now talking with my boss. Don't do that to yourself. You know you're worth it. Do it now. You already came to them right now, so try to figure to solve it now. Now, information power. Gathering information is so important to a job applicant. When you think you know everything you need to know about an employment situation, you probably know about half of what you really need to know. Here's a checklist of some of the things that are helpful to learn. How long have they been looking at applicants? When do they need the position filled? What happened to the previous person doing this job? Was he or she promoted or fired? How many qualified people have applied for the job? What would disqualify an applicant? The more information you can learn about the employer and the situation, the better insight you will have into his or her real motivation for hiring someone. Any bit of information you learn could potentially lead to a creative win-win solution, will help you get the job and improve your bargaining power. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. I used to be reluctant to ask tough questions for fear I would offend people. I used to preface my questions with a statement such as, "Would you mind if I asked you?" or "Would you be embarrassed to tell me?" I have since learned to ask tough questions more directly by professionally asking, how much are you authorized to offer? Or how much bonus did the previous person make? Even if the HR director refuses to answer the questions, you're still gathering information. As a good investigative reporter does, even if he or she refuses to answer, you can learn a lot by judging his or her reactions to your questions. Don't limit your information gathering by only asking questions that you know the employer will answer. People share information much more easily with people in their same peer group. Everybody has an allegiance, not just to the company they work for, but also the profession or occupation in which they see themselves. Let's say that you're a computer engineer, and the HR director gives you a tour of the department, during which you get to chat with one of the computer engineers. You call him and ask to meet him for lunch the next day. You will be able to get all kinds of information because he sees himself in the same peer group as you. Note that in that example, you ask the engineer to meet for lunch. Information flows a lot more freely out of the workplace. In the workplace, invisible chains of protocols surround employers and employees. They are sensitive to what they feel they should talk about and what they feel they shouldn't. Get them out of the work environment, and information flows much more freely. Certainly, if you could get that employer out for a game of golf or out for dinner, information would flow. But even if you can get them out of their office to their company lunchroom or across the street to Starbucks for a cup of coffee, information will flow much more readily. Kipling once wrote about his 6 honest serving men. He said that these 6 taught him all he knew. Those 6 serving men were who, what, where, when, why, and how. Today, we recognize them as the first words of open-ended questions. Questions phrased in such a way that their answers provide additional information. The opposite of this are closed-ended questions, which is simple, yes or no, can answer without giving any additional information. So let's look at the differences between open-ended and closed-ended questions that deal with salary negotiations. Open-ended, what's the biggest hiring bonus you've ever paid? How flexible are you on your offer? And the closed-ended are, would you pay a hiring bonus if I came on board on the 1st of the month? Would you include a company car? When you are trying to gather information, use open-ended questions. Open-ended questions keep the employer talking, and that relaxes him or her. This interview skills takes practice to perfect, but the better you become at it, the more information you will gather. Thinking that this is a little bit hard for you, you can reach out to me on Facebook, Let's Talk Careers with Sarah, and we can discuss it and train and practice together until you feel more confident and more willing to go up to your boss and just nail it. And you will know you are going to feel much happier that you actually had done it. Let's take a break now.
Found a place to celebrate? But wait, you are missing a sweet table. With fancy desserts and a menu full of items of your choice. Call 347-265-5063. You can have a sweet table as if you are a celebrity. Quality worth every penny. Order from New York Artisan Bakery. Want to win your party? Call 347-265-5063.
Projecting that you are prepared to walk away is the number one pressure point to use when negotiating with employers. But how do you give yourself walk-away power? You do it by giving yourself options. Before you're going into a negotiation, develop some options. Research 2 other employment opportunities with which you'd be almost as happy. This doesn't mean that you are going to storm into your boss and say, "Give me what I want," or "I'm out of here," but it will make you a more powerful negotiator. Employers seem to be able to sense when you have other options, and this makes you a more powerful negotiator. When you are negotiating compensation with a new employer, your compensation package can go up dramatically. If you have one or more other employers making you offers, this really hits home to me in a negotiation with a book club. I have sold 4 of my books to major book clubs, so I know how much they pay. But once I got 3 times what I was expecting, why? Because there was another book club bidding on the same book. Having options gives you a power in negotiation, so develop your options before you start negotiating. Study the pressure points and try them out in small day-to-day negotiations. Practice them in the situations that aren't important to you so you can perfect them for use in ones that are. Time pressure, information power, and walk-away power are 3 powerful pressure points that, when used properly, will get you better deals in any salary negotiation. Now, ask for more than you expect to get. One of the most important negotiating gambits is to have the courage to ask for more than you expect to get in the negotiations. If you are hoping to get a 10% increase in pay, you are better off to ask for a 20% increase in pay, and then be willing to back down from that position. If you are applying for a new job that offers $80,000 and you are thinking of asking for $100,000 and settling for $90,000, you are better off to ask for $110,000. International negotiators say there are many more reasons for putting a proposal on the negotiating table than the thought that the other side might say yes. International negotiators often make outrageous demands even though they know the other side will never agree. They will give you 3 justifications for doing this. It puts new pressure on the other side. It expands the negotiating range so that any compromise seems to be a concession. It gives you a chance to judge the other side's reaction to the proposal. The same principles apply in asking for an increase in pay. When you ask for more than you expect to get, you put pressure on your boss that wasn't there before. You expand the negotiating range, which creates a climate where your boss can have a win in the negotiations. Because when they ask for 20% and then back down to 10%, the compromise seems to be a concession. But more importantly, you have allowed your boss to have a win in the negotiation. He or she may even end up with the HR director saying to his or her boss, "Well, she asked me for a 20% increase, but I was able to negotiate her down to a 10% increase." Like Kissinger, Richard Nixon's secretary of State and one of the top international negotiators of last century, went so far as to say effectiveness at the bargaining table depends on your ability to overstate your initial demands. Note that Kissinger says ability, meaning how well you can do it. Why do you think he said this so equivocally? It seems like such a simple theory, but there are a lot of underlying reasons to make it one of the most powerful negotiating gambits of all. So here are 5 reasons for overstating your initial demands. You might just get it. Asking for more makes it easier to get what you really want. Asking for more raises your perceived value. Asking for more creates a climate where the other side can have a win with you. And asking for more than you expect to get prevents deadlocks when dealing with an egotistical person. So let's go over that. You might just get it. If you're a positive thinker, that's probably the first thing that occurred to you. You might just get it. And the only way you're going to find out is to ask for it. It might be your lucky day. It may be the day that all that rabbit foot stroking and charm carrying pays off for you. And the only way you're going to find out is to ask. There's a corollary to this principle. The less you know about the situation, the more you expand the negotiating range. For 2 reasons. You may be uninformed about what this employer is willing to pay. If you haven't researched pay scales and if you haven't done the thorough research you should, You may be way off in your estimates of what the job pays. You may think that $80,000 a year is pushing the envelope, while the employer expects to pay $95,000. If that's what the employer thinks the job is worth, he or she might refuse to hire someone who will only ask for $80,000, assuming that such an applicant could not be qualified. If you are dealing with a stranger, you need to build a rapport quickly. The fastest way to build rapport is to be able to make concessions. I agree that's a long way from being the best way to build rapport, but it's the fastest. I learned that from my friends. One day at dinner, he asked if he could borrow a car that evening. And I was surprised he asked because I always had a rule that he couldn't drive it unless I was with him, but I didn't want to upset him, so I coached my reply gently. Dwight, that's a very fast car. I don't think I'd feel comfortable letting you drive it unless I'm with you. I would hate to see you get hurt in an accident. So he looked really disappointed and said, could I borrow the minivan then? I wasn't too eager to let him do that either, but I thought about it for a while and then said, okay, I guess I don't have a problem with you doing that. I didn't think anything of it until half an hour later. I looked out into the driveway. Dwight plays bass guitar with a group of his friends, and he was loading 2 huge loudspeakers into the back of the minivan. Wait a minute, I thought that he evidently had no intentions of borrowing my Corvette. He just knew to ask for more than you expect to get. It makes it a lot easier to get what you really want. Is there a danger here? Can you blow yourself out of the contention for a job by asking for too much? Yes, indeed. Employers are reluctant to hire an employee for less money than they request. They are afraid that the employee will be unhappy. They are afraid of the employees will be too demanding for other increases, and they are afraid that the employee will take the job but leave for the first better paying job that comes along. If you are pushing the envelope on your demands, you need to imply some flexibility. Let's say that an employer has floated $80,000 as a ballpark figure for what the job pays. You would like to get $100,000 but would settle for $90,000. Rather than asking for $90,000 with a take it or leave it attitude, I'd rather see you ask for $110,000 and imply some flexibility. Demanding $110,000 would be a mistake. If you demand $100,000 with a take it or leave it attitude, you may not even get the negotiation started. The employer may take you out of the running if there is no possibility of paying you that much. Imply some flexibility when you push the envelope. The employer asks you what it would take to get you on board and reply, based on all the money I'm going to make you in this position, I think that $110,000 would be a reasonable figure for me to suggest. At that, the HR director will be thinking, that's not going to fly, but this is my best candidate, and it does sound as though there is some flexibility here. I'm going to spend some time negotiating with him and see what I can get him for. Then you ask for more raises, your perceived value. You need to tell the potential employer that you think you're worth and why. The higher the number, the more the perceived value. If the HR director asks you how much you want and you will lack the courage to forcefully ask for what you feel you're worth, you are immediately discount that perceived value. Which applicant would you rather hire if you knew nothing else about them? You ask each applicant how much money they want, and applicant A says, I feel that I am worth every penny of $100,000. Applicant B says, I would like to get $100,000, but I'll take $80,000 if that's all the job pays. It's the same mistake that the salesperson makes when he or she drops the price too quickly. Right? The buyer says, give me your best price. The salesperson responds with, list price is $75 per widget, but I can give them to you for $65 if you'll give me the order today. See the mistake that has been made? He or she has immediately discounted and perceived value of the product and service. Don't do that when you're negotiating your compensation package. Leave that big number out there in writing if you can. That's one of the 7 keys to credibility I talk about in my show. And people are more likely to believe what they see in writing than are when they just hear it.
You are tuning in to Let's Talk Careers with Sarah. I'm aired every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. In this show, I talk about career advancement, resume revamps, interview expectations, how to stand out from the crowd, how to brand yourself, and skills you need to become a CEO. All of this is on Armed Radio online show, Let's Talk Careers with Sarah, exclusively on TuneIn Satellite and the Armed Radio Network.
I am running out of time, so that will be another topic we'll discuss in my show perhaps next Wednesday. And I would like to say thank you for those who are listening to me. Thank you so much for doing your homework, by listening to experts like me about jobs, about resumes, and about how to be happy in a work environment. So I really want to say thank you again. So I'm going to see you next Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Armed Radio. Let's Talk Careers with Sarah.
You are tuning in on Armed Radio and Let's Talk Careers with Sarah every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. I talk about careers and job hunting. If you would like to ask a question or would like to hear about previous shows that you have missed, you can find me on Facebook at Let's Talk Careers with Sarah. You can learn about jobs, tips, and advice on my page. If you have a career-related question, you can just message me on Facebook.